We are holding on Samach Aleph Amud Beis 61b, and we learned all about the story of Rabbi Akiva. We mentioned the famous question of how was he allowed to be Meiser Nefesh, and give up his life for teaching Torah in public if it's not one of the big three mitzvahs that a person is supposed to give up their life for. And we explained that there's a few reasons why it shouldn't be a problem. Number one is that it's sad that there are opinions that even if a person is not obligated to give up their life, they still are allowed to give up other mitzvahs. They're just not obligated to give up their life for other mitzvahs. And therefore, if someone wanted to give up their life for other mitzvahs, they can. There's two parts to that, really. One is that anyone could, if they just want to, they can give up their life for other mitzvahs, or it could apply to special leaders and tzaddikim and righteous people in order to show the importance of that mitzvah, or so on, or for whatever reason, a tzaddik or someone very righteous has the right to be moiser nefesh even for one of the regular mitzvahs, even if it's not one of the big three important, the big three commandments of not to kill, not to commit adultery, and not to worship idols. Then we mentioned that there's also within the laws of giving up one's life, there are laws that a person is obligated for any mitzvah if it's done in a quorum of 10 Yidden. There's 10 Jewish people there, 10 men. You would be obligated, I believe men, actually, I'm not 100% sure, I believe it would be men, that you would be obligated, it's Kiddush Hashem B'Rabim, you would be obligated to sanctify Hashem by giving up one's life, as long as the purpose of doing this transgression is that the guy has in mind that you're doing it in order to transgress. In other words, he wants you to transgress a sin. He's not just doing it that he needs a house to be built. It happens to be Shabbos, and he's forcing you to build him a house. That's for his own benefit, his own pleasure. That even if there's 10 Yidden around, you're not allowed to transgress. You're not allowed to let your life be killed. But if he's doing it in order to get you to transgress a sin, you don't transgress. You say, nope, I'm not doing it. There's 10 Yidden around. That is a mitzvah of giving up one's life, even not for the three big sins, even for any mitzvah, that would be a case. Then there's the other situation of Shas Hashmad, which is in a time when there's a decree against fulfilling mitzvahs from the government. There's an evil government that they are specifically going against Yiddishkeit and any Yiddish commandment, and they are going against one of the mitzvahs or all the mitzvahs. And that time, even a custom, it is a mitzvah to give up one's life, even for a regular law, or even the Gemara brings even a custom of shoelaces. A person would give up their life if there's a certain way that the Jewish people tied their shoelaces or color, and if the Goyim wanted them to switch and change, they have a mitzvah to give up their life and not switch, not act similar to the Goyim, and for sure any mitzvah would apply the same law. So these all are explanations. That's basically 4 explanations for Rabbi Akiva why he was allowed to give up his life for the mitzvah of Limud HaTorah B'Rabim, teaching Torah in public. Now, there was one other opinion that is not from a halachic sefer. It's more from a actually, I don't know the author, but I believe it's more of a midrashic, expounding a drush sefer, more insights from a later rabbi. But he mentions that it could be that the mitzvah of Torah is one of the big three. It's included in the it's included in the mitzvah of not committing adultery. So I mentioned it is a little stretch. I don't know if he himself says he's not sure if it fits halachically, but he's throwing it as a thought, giving it as a thought, that there is a concept that if a person isn't learning Torah, his mind will be filled with schmutz. There is such an idea. In fact, it was a Hayomim last week. There's a study that people do every single day, and one of the days last week, that daily little study was about how if a person's mind is not busy with Torah, it'll be busy with it. The emptiness it'll fill itself up with other emptiness, which is inappropriate. Yes, Ben.
I'm thinking maybe the importance here is that it's not that he's learning Torah, he's teaching Torah. So he's really doing it for the benefit of others.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, that was one of the concepts was mitzvah derabah, that it was it was in public, because it's teaching Torah in public. So if he would stop it would be considered
not just teaching; it's also for the benefit of the public.
But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that fits the category that a person's allowed to give up their life.
No, but it gives it more importance,
But it has to, but it has to. I'm just saying, I don't know if that's one of the categories that allows that changes. But the Hayom here, last week it says the Marcheshvan, the thought, is a garment in an aid to the brain, to the mind and the midos, the mind and the emotions. And when a person doesn't have his when the thought has no job from the mind or the emotions, it's also keeping busy, but its busyness has no purpose. It just becomes disgusting. And the source of foreign thoughts or evil thoughts are from the emptiness of the brain. When the seichel is involved, then the thoughts have something to serve. And there's no place for foolish thoughts or shtus in hevel. So in other words, the idea is that if a person's involved in Torah, in other words, Rabbi Akiva was teaching Torah in public, so he was basically keeping everyone away from adultery, because the thoughts would lead to inappropriate thoughts, which could lead to ultimately, as our Gemara mentioned, it leads to adultery. So so possibly the mitzvah of Talmud Torah would be like a slight variation, or a slight potential cause for the sin of adultery, and therefore it could be considered maybe one of the big three. And the reason to say that, why would someone want to stretch it so far, is because we did find that adultery does not only apply when a person has relations with a married woman. That's not the only case where a person has to give up their life. We saw in Shulchan Aruch on Friday that the law of adultery, a person giving up their life in order not to commit adultery, applied even to variants that are of much lesser significance, but yet they still fall into the category of giving up one's life and not sinning. And in the examples that were given were a person who the doctors say he's going to die if he doesn't have relations with a certain girl. And even according to one opinion, the girl was single, but yet, so it's not like adultery. It's an inappropriate act. It's a sin. There's punishments involved, but it's not the cardinal sin. It's not the capital punishment. But nevertheless, the Gemara says that's also part of better he should die than commit that sin, or even be with her and she's naked, or she's behind a fence, a wall. Even so, it would be considered better we don't allow him that ability to have his desire. Instead, we say better he should die. So we see that the concept of giving up one's life in order not to commit adultery is not only with the full-fledged act of adultery, it even applies in acts of lesser importance, maybe of lesser severity, but yet it still has that slight connection to adultery. So therefore, one of the commentaries wants to say maybe the act of Rabbi Akiva of having people learn Torah was sort of like a situation where he was causing people not to commit adultery. Anyway, that's one of the thoughts mentioned. Okay, so we have all these answers for Rabbi Akiva, and then we were talking about the argument that Papas ben Yehuda, and who was Papas. I don't know if any of you did any research on Papas. Did anyone find anything else with Papas? So
I guess he was not killed for that, was he?
Well, the whole story is a little vague in our Gemara. It doesn't tell us what he was punished for. It doesn't tell us his outcome. But we do find, in other words, he just says that he was caught for Devarim B'Talim. But it doesn't say what.
Yeah.
Now,
Also, Rebbe,
what is that?
these were not, you're talking about the Asurei Harugim, right?
Rabbi Akiva, Surah Harugim Malchus, but Papas ben Yehuda was not. Papas ben Yehuda was not one of them.
I was just saying the Asurei Harugim were not all at one time either. It was over a period of 100 years.
Correct. But we're not really dealing with that. We're more the question was, we found different stories about Papas ben Yehuda. So
Right.
Wondering if anyone found anything like that, combined everything, and clarified, maybe did a little research on the full story, if it's two different people or what. In any event, the Gemara concluded that the students asked Rabbi Akiva, Ad Khan, do you have to be Meiser Nefesh? Do you have to go this? He was being Makabel Ol Malchus Shamayim. At that stage, he was saying Shema when they were raking his flesh. And he said, my whole life, I was pained over this pasuk of V'chol nafshecha, to give up my life for Hashem. I said, when would I be able to do that? Rabbi Akiva said, and now that it came to now that I was able to, I shouldn't fulfill it. So one of the commentaries mentioned that what he was saying was they were surprised that he was doing it with such joy, that he seemed to be excited over it, and they were surprised that and on that he answered that my whole life I've been waiting for this. Of course I'm going to do it with excitement. This is what I've been hoping to be able to merit such a ability to fulfill the mitzvah, to fulfill this mitzvah. And so I'm not going to do it with great love. This is from a sefer called Hamusar V'Hadas. I'm not sure the author, but it's a nice insight. I think that I'll just read it a little more insight here. He says, what were they surprised? Every Yid is supposed to be Meiser Nefesh for Hashem. And this was their question. They were they saw that he was doing it with such dveikus, such closeness and ava, that to the extent, and he brings a pasuk, Mayim Rabim lo yuchlu lechabois rishvei yesh, which I'll have us call. This is a pasuk in the Ksuvim. It says that many waters can't extinguish the fiery love and the flame that a person has, that a soul has for Hashem. And they saw him fulfilling like this mitzvah with such great love, and therefore they asked him, how do you reach such a level to fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem with such a shleimus, with such completeness that is beyond imagination of a human ability? In other words, it's in a way that, like it says, you're obligated to bless Hashem for the bad, just like you bless Hashem for the good. And Rava said to accept it b'simcha. So, in other words, that's the Gemara we learned, that we're supposed to accept the bad tidings the same way as we accept good tidings. And Rashi explained to bless Hashem with a complete heart. So they asked him, how do you come to accomplish this and really have such a love of giving up your life for Hashem? And his answer was, it doesn't come from one time. This comes from years of hope. Kol yomai hayisi mitztar. My whole life I was hoping for this, and that I would be able to fulfill this b'shleimus. And now, the time comes that I could fulfill it. I'm not going to fulfill it with simcha and leif shalem. And in order not to be misbalbel and machshavos, that from the Yetzer, he was mayrich b'yechad. He said the word echad long. He was medabik himself in the yechidei shalolam till his neshama went out with that word. And the Hashem, the Yodea Machshava, is sent out a baskoil, and it said, Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva sheyotza nishmasta be'echad. Praiseworthy is Rabbi Akiva that his neshama left with the word echad on his lips. So that's the a very powerful insight of how he was fulfilling this mitzvah b'shleimus with great love, and the way he came to it was because he always was hoping. He in other words, his whole life he was working on fulfilling the mitzvah of b'chol nafshecha with all of one's soul. He was always hoping to love Hashem with to that level, and therefore he was able to fulfill it b'shleimus completely. So that's basically the end of that Gemara. We're now going to start the next Gemara, which is on the next piece of the Mishnah. And the next Gemara talks about a person.
Rabbi, before you go on,
yeah,
could you do the next line after that?
Which line?
It says Amu Malachei Hasharet.
Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Yeah.
Zu Torah v'zu schara. Is this the Torah? Is this the reward? It's supposed to be Mimsim Yadcha Hashem. Dying from the hand of Hashem is what David HaMelech wanted. Directly from Hashem. Mimasim v'goymer, from instead of dying through another person. In other words, it should be directly from Hashem. So isn't that wouldn't that be the reward for Rabbi Akiva? Amar lahem, Hashem said, Chelkam b'chayim. Their portion is in the real life, and meaning in Olam Haba. Yatzis Basko v'yamra, a heavenly voice came out and said, Ashrecha, Rabbi Akiva, praiseworthy is Rabbi Akiva, she'ato mezumen l'chayei ha'olam haba, you are prepared for the everlasting life in Olam Haba.
You're prepared, or you are invited.
Invited. I think mezuman could mean both. I think it's right, mezuman, like money that's ready, that's prepared. I don't know. I think it's I'm not sure. I don't know. How does the art scroll? Anyone have what does Safaria say? Invited?
I wouldn't know. I would have translated you're invited.
In the Steinsaltz, it says you are destined for life in the world to come.
I think that's more like prepared. Yeah.
The art scroll says you are ready for the life.
Ready. Yeah. So I think mezuman has both meanings. I know in Israel, when you want to buy something, good deal, you say mezuman. I think something like the money is cash. So it's prepared. Okay. Anyway, but you're right. Hazmana is also a invitation. But I think it means both. Okay. So the Gemara now quotes the Mishnah, and it's going to talk about doing things respectfully, near towards the Beis Hamikdash. In other words, person Mishnah said, "Lo yakal adam." Let me tell you where we are. Actually, we're on 61b, and we are. Let me see, about 10, 12 lines up from the bottom of the page, maybe. Probably about 12 lines up from the bottom of the page by the two dots. Lo yakal adam es reisha. This is the Mishnah. Mishnah said, person shouldn't act lightheaded. Keneged Sha'ar HaMizrach, opposite the eastern gate. Shehu Mechuvin Keneged Beis Kodshei HaKodashim, which is directly towards the Holy of Holies. And the Gemara says on this statement of the Mishnah, Amar Rav Yehuda Amarav. Rav Yehuda Amarav says, this statement that a person is not allowed to be lightheaded in that area towards the eastern gate, so it only applies from a place called Seifim, which is a place where Seifim means to see. It means from a place where you can see, but there was an area where they would call it Seifim because that was the area where you could see the Beis Hamikdash, and you could see Har HaBayis, you could see the mountain where the Beis Hamikdash was, and so from that place and closer to the Beis Hamikdash, you had to be careful what you did because you wouldn't want to act in a lightheaded manner. Uberaya. And specifically, when a person can see the mountain, when he sees the mountain, so it would only apply then. It wouldn't apply if, let's say, you're too low and you're not able to see Har HaBayis. If you look in Rashi, Rashi uses this term. Minhat Seifim. Seifim is a makom sheyachilim lirois misham har habayis. Misham v'hala ini yachilim lirois. From that place is where you could see Har HaBayis. From there and further away, you weren't able to see Har HaBayis. So that was the place where you had to start being careful to act appropriately and respectfully for Hashem, because that's the area where the Shekhinah is obviously much more over there. And specifically, if it's in a place where you could actually see it. So even if you're close, it wouldn't apply everywhere there. It would only apply if you actually could see from where you are the Har HaBayis. So in other words, it had to fall into both categories. It needs to be a certain closeness, and in that closeness, it also has to be that you're actually able to see. Now, Itmar Nami, we also learn, it was also said, that's a little more literal, Itmar Nami, it was also said, like in the Beis Medrash, they said the following thing. Amar Rab Abba Bereid Reb Chia bar Abba. Rab Abba said the name, Rab Abba, the son of Reb Chia bar Abba. He said, Hachi Amar Reb Yochanan, this is what Reb Yochanan said, Lo Amru. It wasn't said, they have to be careful, and you're not allowed to act lightheaded. Ella minat seifim v'lefnim, only from that area called seifim, in further closer in. Uveraya, and only if you can actually see. Ubeshe'ein geder, and if there's no wall, and there's no wall that blocks you from the Har HaBayis. But if there is a wall, it would be permissible because you're not exactly there. But he says also one more thing. Ubizman shashchina shayra, and specifically in the time that the Shechina is there, which Rashi tells us means in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, that the Beis Hamikdash is in existence. Now it's interesting because by the first Beis Hamikdash, we know that there was the Shechina. The second Beis Hamikdash, it says that they were missing a number of things in the second temple. And one of the things that it says was missing was the Shechina. So the question is, what does Rashi mean here? That the Shechina was Sheira, and he says in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, does he mean specifically in the first Beis Hamikdash? Or he doesn't say, he doesn't clarify. Maybe he means both. But the only problem is, it says when the Shechina is Sheira, which might mean only the first Beis Hamikdash, because only the first Beis Hamikdash really had the full-fledged Shechina. But it would seem that Rashi means both. And obviously Rashi is understanding that even though it says in the Gemara somewhere else that there were 5 things missing, one of them was the Shechina, that in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, it wasn't as holy as the first Beis Hamikdash. It doesn't mean it didn't have any Shechina. It meant it didn't have the level that the first Beis Hamikdash was on. It had less. So therefore, probably mean both in time of both Beis Hamikdash, both Batei Mikdash, you would be prohibited to act lightheaded. But if this Beis Hamikdash is not there, then it's not a problem. So now the Gemara says that Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis learned, and the rabbis learned that Hanifna be Yehuda, if a person needs to relieve themselves in the land of Yehuda, which is the land near where the Beis Hamikdash is, lo yifne mizrach l'mayru. He shouldn't relieve himself between east and west, because east and west would be the direction of where Yerushalayim is, and that would be inappropriate. So obviously what this means is that he's in the entire land of Yehuda, and which is a large area in Eretz Yisrael, and it includes Yerushalayim. And basically, if his face is to the east and his back is to the west, or is the opposite, or his face is to the west and his back is to the east, what will end up happening is that he will be exposing himself towards Yerushalayim, and that would be a problem.
Rabbi.
So therefore, a person should not face east or west. They should face north and south. Ela tzafa and v'dara.
Rabbi.
Yes.
So, but that assumes that there are no walls around you. You're in an open space.
So that's the thing. This opinion seems not to follow that, because this opinion seems to be, and that's one of the reasons why the Gemara is bringing it here, is because we see from this that it doesn't seem to exempt you. It seems the entire Yehuda you have this issue. The entire land of Yehuda seems to be a problem. Seems to be a problem, and that doesn't seem to fit with the previous opinion. So we're gonna see. So this is the first opinion over here with Brisa. Begalil, and in Galil is more north, the Galil. So lo yipane ela mizrach umayra. A person should specifically relieve himself between east and west, and not north and south, because Galil is north. So if a person were to expose himself, it would be inappropriate to expose oneself north and south, because that would be in an area that would be exposing oneself towards the Yerushalayim, and it wouldn't be respectful. Yes, Ben.
I think it means to the east or to the west, not in between. And the same with north and south, to the north or to the south, not the other way. Because if you are in between, you might be actually facing the Beit HaMikdash.
So you're saying only if you're exactly corresponding.
If you are in between, you always do east and to the east and to the west, or to the north and to the south, depending on where you are.
Okay, well, let's see. Stay tuned.
Okay.
So the Gemara says Rabbi Yossi matir. Rabbi Yossi permits it. Shahaya Rabbi Yossi Yomer, because Rabbi Yossi would say, like Asru, that it's not prohibited. They didn't prohibit it. Ella beraya, only if a person sees. U'makom she'ein sham geder, where there's no fence, there's no wall. U'bezman shashchina shayir, and only time of the Beis Hamikdash. So Rabbi Yossi seems to follow the opinion. In other words, the opinion we mentioned earlier seems to follow Reb Yossi. And now, surprisingly, in the same brisa, we have a third view, and the third view says v'chachamim eisrim, and the rabbis argue. Now, what about the first opinion? The first opinion said that you have to be careful in the entire area of, Yehuda, and in the area of the Galil. Each one has their prohibited location option areas that are prohibited. In other words, which direction? Each one has their area that it's their directions that are prohibited in the Golan and in Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi says it's not. You don't have to worry about these big areas because you're so far away and there's walls and this. We're not. That's not the issue. There's no Beis Hamikdash now. You don't have to worry about all these things, and you have to be able to be roya. You have to see the harabayas from where you stand. It's not a big issue. And then it says a third opinion that the rabbis prohibit it. Now it sounds like the rabbis are prohibiting it. Sounds the same as the first rabbis who prohibited it in the first opinion. Now, the first opinion said that a person has to be careful which direction they relieve themselves, and the end opinion, the rabbis also prohibit. Another person has to be careful in which direction. So the question is, what's the difference between the two opinions of the rabbis? Now, it seems like it's the same view. So why does it divide it and say the rabbis hold this way, and then the first opinion also seem to say the same thing? So the Gemara asks, Chachamim hainu Tanakama. The rabbis that it mentions in the end line, the last point of this brisa, seem to be the same as the opinion in the first view. That's called the Tanakama, the first opinion. The first Tana, first rabbi. So the Gemara explains, Ika beinaihu stadin. And this is where Ben's statement fits in. The difference between the two is stadin, is the sides. There's areas in Yehuda, which is the big area where Yerushalayim is, but in that area there are parts of it that are not exactly east and west to Yerushalayim. They're really from the side. They're diagonal. And there are places in the Galil that are not exactly north of Yerushalayim. They're more diagonal. So the way that Tanakama writes it, he seems to include the entire Eretz Yehuda and the entire Galil, and the rabbis in the end seem to only prohibit if you're directly in line with the Beis Hamikdash, with Yerushalayim. You're directly in line with Yerushalayim, that's where it would be a problem. And that's Ben's point, but Ben's point really applies to the Chachamim, to the rabbis' view at the end, where it says the rabbis prohibit it, but they don't mention the whole Yehuda, the whole Galil. So therefore, the rabbis, they prohibit it. What Rabbi Yossi permits, they prohibit, but not as, they don't prohibit it like the first opinion. The first opinion prohibited it completely, and they prohibited it, only partially. Only when you're directly in line with Yerushalayim, then it would be inappropriate to relieve oneself. Now the Gemara continues with another brisa, and the brisa says, Tanya Idach. We learned another brisa. Hanifne b'Yehuda, a person who relieves himself in Yehuda, lo yipaneb mizrach umayrav. He shouldn't relieve himself between east and west. Towards when he's he shouldn't relieve himself between east and west. Ella tzafain v'daram. Rather, he should face north and south. V'galil tzafain v'daram, and in Galil Safain v'daraim is aser, is prohibited. North and south is prohibited. Mizrach umayrav mutter. Between east and west is permitted. Again, because Galil is in the north, so he's not directly in the between. If he faces east and west, he's not in line with Yerushalayim. Then it says Rabbi Yossi matir. Rabbi Yossi permits it. Shahaya Rabbi Yossi Yomer, because Rabbi Yossi used to say, Lo asru ella raya. Your only prohibition is when you can see from where you are the makom, the Har Habayis, the place where the Beis Hamikdash is on the mountain of Har Habayis. By the way, that's where the western wall is, the wall around Har Habayis. There's a wall around the mountain. I'm sorry, a wall around the mountain. Just 1 second. Okay, sorry. So Rabbi Yossi said that it's not a problem. This is the same Rabbi Yossi that we had earlier. That it mentioned about Raya, that if he sees the makom, he sees the place of Har Habayis. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Bizman Shebeis Hamikdash Kayam Aser, and Rabbi Yehuda adds another point that the previous Rabbi Yossi had said, that it's only in a time when the Beis Hamikdash is Kayam, when there's a Beis Hamikdash. That's when it's prohibited to relieve oneself in those directions towards Yerushalayim, because it's disrespectful. But only at the Beis Hamikdash Kayam, it's mutter. If there's no Beis Hamikdash, it's permissible. And Rabbi Akiva Oiser b'chol makom. Rabbi Akiva prohibits in all places. So here the Gemara has the same problem. We have a first opinion that says that it is prohibited to relieve oneself in these different in these certain directions, depending on which area you're in. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda are lenient, and then it comes to Rabbi Akiva in the end, and it says he prohibits it. Well, what's the difference between the Rabbi Akiva and the first opinion? Rabbi Akiva, Hainu Tanakama. Rabbi Akiva is the first opinion. It seems like it's the same as the first opinion. Why is it dividing it up into two different views? The Gemara answers, Ika beinayu chutz la'aretz. The difference between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda is, what about outside of Israel? The Tanakama prohibits only in Yehuda and Galil. Rabbi Akiva says, b'chol makom, any place where you're directly towards Yerushalayim, that would be a problem. You're exposing yourself towards the makom of where the Beis Hamikdash is. So Rabbi Akiva seems to be much more strict and would prohibit anywhere.
So what does that mean? You can't build a toilet anywhere?
In a certain direction, or you'd have to sit on it.
According to the Bi Akiva.
Right. You have to understand, in those days, they didn't have these official bathrooms, and people would basically put stones, which we'll soon see. They would put stones in certain directions. We'll soon see. So the Gemara says that Rabba have a shadyon lei of nei Mizrach umayru. Rabba would shadyon lei. He would place them between Mizrach and Ma'arav, between east and west, and in other words, this way, when he would sit, it would be between north and south. Okay, let's try this again. So Azal Abaye, so in other words, the main point was that he was facing north and south. So Azal Abaye went and he Shadanhu in Tafan Vidarim, and he placed them the opposite way. So all Rabba went to use the bathroom, and Tartzinu, he fixed it. And Amar, and he said, "My hide to come at Sarli. What is this? Who is this? That's bothering. That's paining me to have to switch them around." Anak Rabbi Akiva spirally, I hold like Rabbi Akiva, the Amar b'chol makam aser, who holds any place even outside of Eretz Yisrael. You have to be careful. So we see that Rabbah was careful about which direction, even outside of Eretz Yisrael, even in Bavel. That's the end of page 61b, and now we're up to 62a. Tanya Amar Rabbi Akiva. We learned in a brisa that we learned in a brisa, Tanya, Amar Rabbi Akiva. One time I entered Acha Rabbi Yoshua Lebeis Akisei. I entered to Rabbi Yoshua after him in the bathroom. V'limadati mimenu shleisha dvarim, and I learned three things from him. Limadati, I learned she'ein nifnin mizrach umayrav. That person shouldn't relieve themselves even nowadays between east and south. Elatzaf and v'darim, rather between between person should not relieve themselves between east and west. Rather, he should relieve himself between north and south. I learned she'ein nefrayin mu'umad. I also learned that a person shouldn't reveal themselves while they're standing. Ella miyoshav, rather if they're sitting. The third thing is v'lamadati, and I learned she'ein mekanchen b'yamin. Person shouldn't clean themselves with their right hand. Ella biatz b'smoil, rather with their the left hand. And the Gemara will explain reasons for this later. So the Gemara says, Amalei ben Azai. So Ben Azai said to Rabbi Akiva, "What are you telling me? You went into the bathroom after Rabbi Yoshua and you learned three things? That sounds a little surprising? You walked into the bathroom and followed him and watched him?" So the Gemara says, it says, he answered him, so 1 second. So Amalei ben Azai said, Adkan, you were so you had the audacity against your Rebbe to do that, to look at him. You were chutzpahdik against your Rebbe, like to go after him into the bathroom. Amar Lei, Rabbi Kiva said, I was just wanted to learn Torah. I wanted to know what the halacha, what the proper way is. So that's an interesting way of, thinking that he was able to go. But then we see that Ben Azai seemed to agree. Tanya Ben Azai Yomer. So then we have a brisa. The next brisa says the story of Ben Azai. So the first story is Ben Azai was surprised at Rabbi Akiva. Now look at this story where Ben Azai says a similar thing. Yes, Yehuda.
Yeah, but you're not supposed to learn Torah in the bathroom.
So the thing is that there are halachas that are applicable even in the bathroom. You have to know them. So these halachas, they're meant for the bathroom. So you have to think of them even in the bathroom. That's part of the package. So the next one says Tanya Ben Azai Yomer. Ben Azai says that one time I went after Rabbi Akiva. I learned three things. I learned one doesn't relieve themselves between east and west. Ella and Darum, rather north and south. I learned and I also learned that I learned about between
Unexposed.
that. So the first thing is a person has to relieve themselves north and south. I also learned that a person shouldn't be
Exposed.
shouldn't expose themselves standing, rather only sitting. And I learned Shane Mekanchan Beyamin Elabismail. Person should only clean themselves. They should wipe themselves with their left hand. Amalai Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said to Ben Azai the same question. He said, "Hey Azta Panecha, you had such chutzpah berabcha against your Rebbe. The Ben Azai would do such a thing to his Rebbe Akiva, that you go into the bathroom." So he answered, "Amar loy Torah." So he told him, "This is Torah, and I need to learn Torah. So sorry, I had no choice. I had to do that." The Gemara continues and says, "Rav Kana old Gana to say Purya Derav." So Rav Kahana entered and he slept under the bed of Rav to hide over there. Sham he heard. Is this interrupting you a lot? Can you hear me clearly, or can you hear me, or the noise? The baby is too.
You're fine. You're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
I don't know if you're fine, but we hear you. It's okay.
Okay. So Rav Kahana went under the bed. He went Gana to the bed. I'm sorry. All Gana. He went and slept to say under Purye de Rav, the bed of Rav. Shame de Sach. So he heard Rav speaking the Sachak, and he was playing. He was like laughing. And he was with his wife having relations. And Amar Lay, so Rav Kahana told Rav, Dami Pume, the Abba, the mouth of Abba, which means Rav, the mouth of Rav, Doime, it seems, Ka'adam Ro'e, I'm sorry, Dame Pume, the Abba, Kideloi Sarif Tavshila, as if he's never swallowed a cooked meal in his life. In other words, he seemed so excited to be with his wife that that Rav Kahana said it seemed like you were never, you never had a cooked meal before. Like you were so hungry, so Amar Lay. So Rav told Rav Kahana, Hacha are you here? Poik, get out! This is not appropriate. Amar Loi, he tells him, this is Torah and I needed to learn. So this is a very surprising statement. I'm not going to really explain it. It's just so shocking that someone would ever do such a thing. That I don't even know what to say. I mean, it's beyond imagination, but this is a story in the Gemara. I guess we have to imagine in the olden days when things were, they didn't have houses. It was like people lived in tents. I don't know. It was more Hamish. I have no idea what was going on there. You were in maybe close settings with other houses. In any event,
But
that is the
Rabbi,
story. That's what's written. I'm not changing anything. Just
Rabbi,
one second. Yes. Yes.
If one of us did it, the rabbis would be all over us.
In newspapers, huh?
Everybody would be all over us. But if one of them does it, it's a different story.
They didn't have newspapers then, maybe. I don't know.
That's right. They had no newspapers then.
Uh-huh.
They had no investigative reporters.
Anyway, the only thing I could think of is that they were such holy people that it was almost like Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, when they had relations, when they were created, they didn't know that there was anything to be embarrassed of before they sinned. There was nothing wrong. There was nothing embarrassing about it. This was a holy act, and only after sin did it become something that had to be done in a concealed way, in a modest way. And in a certain sense, maybe that's the only way I could imagine that there was such an idea that they would, to them.
But at this time, it was not a sin anymore. So that was only Adam. So at that time,
I understand. I'm just saying
better.
they were in the league of like before the sin, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to continue. The Gemara says, what is the reason why a person shouldn't clean themselves with their right hand, only with their left? Why? Amar Rava says, because the Torah was given with the right hand, and Shedemar, as it says, Miminai in Parshas V'zayis HaBracha, it says, Miminai eish das lamai, from his right hand. Miminai eish das lamai, from his right hand, it was a fire of
the law.
Of the law. Thank you. A fire of the law. So, which means that Hashem, so to speak, gave the Torah with his right hand, so to speak. Of course, it doesn't mean Hashem has a hand, but the term that the Torah uses is from his right side. So from that, okay, just play with him for another 5 minutes. I'll be there in a few minutes. I'm gonna come. Okay, you stay with me. You stay with me. Okay, so you stay with me. You take care of him for another 5 minutes. I'm done. I'm done in 5 minutes. You just play there. Just stay there. Okay, so the first opinion was the reason why the right hand is not appropriate is because the Torah was given with Hashem's right hand, and therefore a person should not use the right hand for anything that is not so respectable, something that's dirty. Rabba Bar Bachana says, because a person often sticks his hand into his mouth, and generally it's the right hand that he sticks into his mouth. And therefore, the right hand should always be cleaner than the left hand, and that's why a person shouldn't use their right hand to clean themselves. Reb Shimon ben Lakish Amar b'nei shekosher b'tefillin, because you tie the tefillin with your right hand, therefore it should not be used for something embarrassing, because you're going to be tying it. And this really connects with the idea that the mitzvah of the tefillin is mainly the tying, at least the hand tefillin is mainly the tying, even though the tefillin itself is on the left hand. So you think, the left hand is for sure should be holier, but no. But the act of tying is the emphasis. And what hand does the tying? It's the right hand ties it onto the left. So therefore, it's the right hand that should be used for only respectful things, and not to clean, not for dirty things. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok says, in the way they used to get an aliyah to read in the Torah, they would stand. People would stand next to the person getting the aliyah, and they would put their right hand, to show. They would make notes of how to sing the trup. In other words, there's a certain tune that goes along with the Torah, and even nowadays, you do find sometimes people don't prepare well enough, and they end up needing some help. So some guy stands over there in the bima, and he makes these certain notes. Oh, that's a pashta, reviye, and a severe, and he makes notes. So how are those notes done? So the notes were done with the person's right hand, and therefore it wouldn't be appropriate to use your right hand to clean oneself. So the Gemara says, Kitanoi, this seems like a machlekes of the Tanoim of the earlier rabbis. In other words, these rabbis were Amayroim. But it seems that this is like opinion, the two opinions among the earlier rabbis that we find the machlekes over here. That it's Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says because a person eats with his right hand, so therefore wouldn't be wants to keep that hand should be cleaner. It shouldn't be person should make sure to have it cleaner. And the other reason Rabbi Yeshua says person writes Sifrei Torah and Tefillin, and then the third opinion because a person uses it to show the notes of the Torah so that the guy who's called up to the Torah knows how to read. In the olden days, again, they didn't have a Baal Koreh, they didn't have a person who was officially, his job was to read the Torah. So anyone who got called up, they would read their portion, and that would necessitate them to read it with the right tune, and they wouldn't know it always, so you would have someone who would help them out. So that's these two opinions. Again, Rabbi Yeshua is a new view, that you write Sifrei Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzah. That's a new view, but the two opinions here seem to fit with two of the opinions of the previous statement. Go walk around with him, please, and I'm going to stop. Okay, we'll walk around with your throw. Okay, we're going to have to stop here. You know what? I have to get my sons ran away, and I just need to get them.
Son ran away.
Well, you got to corral them.
I'm with you, Ben.
I just wondered if it was the first ones, the early ones that said not to use the right hand, or was it the last ones?
No, both. It was the statement that all these rabbis that we had the stories with, they didn't use their right hand, right? Remember the story of Rabbi Akiva? He went into the bathroom.
Yeah.
And Renazai. So those rabbis are Tanoim. They are rabbis they are the earlier rabbis from the Tanoic time. They're the earlier. That's where we know it from them. And then the Gemara goes through opinions of why a person shouldn't use their right hand. And there are a few opinions that are later on rabbis. And then we said, but it's really an argument of the Tanoim that the Tanoim seems to be speaking about this as well. And two of them said the same reasons. Two of the later rabbis said the same reasons as earlier rabbis, and then we had a few other reasons. One of the interesting
who does
things
the
is
machloket? Who is in machloket?
Between well, different. They're giving different reasons for it. We have
Rava, the later ones.
They're all involved in the machloket.
The later and the early.
They all. There's initially we had Rabba Bar Bachana, Reb Shimon ben Lakish, Reb Nachman Bar Yitzchok. We had four opinions initially. And then later on, it had three of the earlier rabbis gave their reasons.
So there were cholkim in both groups.
Right. Now, the thing is, what's the difference between all these reasons? If a person is a lefty, what happens if a person is a lefty?
He does a good job.
Huh? So if it's because
the right-handed ones can't do such a good job.
So this is the thing. If you're a lefty, so look at the reasons. If it has to do with Hashem gave the Torah with the right hand, then maybe it's still the right hand is the right hand. It says Hashem's right hand, right? So maybe a person should still not use their left, even though they're a lefty. They should use their left hand when they clean themselves. Maybe according to that reason. According to Rabbi Bar Bachana, that it's because you stick your food into your mouth, you touch your food with your hand. So according to a lefty, should probably use their right hand to clean themselves, right? So in other words, we're jumping to maybe the opposite opinion. In other words, Rabbi Bar Bachana would say, no, use the right hand if you're a lefty. And Reb Shimon ben Lakish says, you tie tefillin. Which hand do you tie tefillin? What is a lefty? So it depends what type of lefty it is. Some lefties, they write with one hand and they do everything with the other hand. So it would depend which hand you tie your tefillin with, right? And then Reb Nachman Bar Yitzchok would say, you show the notes. That would be a lefty would probably use his left hand to show the notes. And then the other opinion, the other opinion was that you write Sefer Torah Tefillin Mezuzahs, probably your left hand, you're writing your Sefer Torah Tefillin Mezuzahs with your left hand, so you probably need to use your right hand. So anyway, this is something to look into. The Shulchan Aruch, there's a whole book on Shulchan Aruch for lefties, because there's so many different laws. What does a lefty do? But there's all different rules. Okay, anyway, my time is up. Sei gesund.
Thank you.
And you later.
Hi, Rabbi.
Have a good
Okay.
day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a good day.